My name is Madison Hayes, and I'm 29 years old. I never thought a simple social media post could shatter my world, but it did. Last month, while scrolling through Instagram, I froze. There was my family, smiling, laughing, arms around each other at our annual summer gathering. The gathering I missed for a work presentation. The caption burned into my screen, "Only the most beloved people." I stared at those words, my stomach dropping as the truth I'd been avoiding for years finally clicked into place. I wasn't there because maybe I wasn't meant to be. Before I share how this moment changed everything, let me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you've ever felt invisible to the people who should see you most, and join me as I explain how one hurtful caption became my unexpected path to freedom. To understand why that caption hit me like a physical blow, you need to know about the Hayes family dynamics. I'm the middle child between my older sister Elizabeth and younger brother Ryan, which already positioned me in that classic forgotten middle child territory. But in our house, it went deeper than birth order. My parents, Diana and Richard Hayes, had a clear vision for our family. They built a respected law firm together in Boston and expected their children to follow the same prestigious path. Elizabeth fulfilled that dream perfectly. 4 years older than me, she was valedictorian of her high school class, graduated summa cum laude from Harvard, and joined the family firm without hesitation. Now she's a partner, married to another attorney, with 2 perfect children who are already being groomed for the same trajectory. Then there's Ryan, 2 years younger than me. He's the golden child, charismatic, athletic, and blessed with the kind of natural intelligence that let him coast through school with minimal effort. While he initially rebelled against the family profession, declaring he wanted to become a musician, he eventually came to his senses, my father's words, and joined the firm after college. My parents never seemed to mind his temporary deviation. They attended every one of his band performances, cheering as loudly as they did at his football games. Ryan's rebellion was seen as charming, a phase that proved his independence while never truly threatening the family legacy. And then there's me. I loved art and writing from an early age. I was creative, sensitive, and drawn to colors and stories rather than legal precedents. My bedroom walls were covered with paintings and magazine cutouts rather than academic awards. When I decided to major in marketing instead of pre-law, the disappointment in my parents' eyes was unmistakable. "Marketing is just manipulation for profit," my father said over dinner when I announced my choice. "You're smarter than that, Madison." My mother was subtler but equally dismissive. "Well, I suppose someone has to make those advertisements. Though I always thought you'd choose something more substantial." The pattern of exclusion started early. When I was 12, I had my first art show at school. My watercolor painting of our family vacation to Maine had been selected for display. The event started at 7 p.m., and by 7:45, I was still standing alone beside my painting while other kids' parents took photos and brought flowers. "They'll be here soon," I told my art teacher, who kept giving me pitying glances. My parents and siblings finally arrived at 8:15, just as the event was ending. They rushed in, my mother flustered. Ryan's baseball practice ran late, and we had to drop Elizabeth at her debate team meeting, she explained, barely glancing at my painting. Did we miss anything important? By high school, I'd stopped expecting them to show up for my events. When I was named editor of the school literary magazine, I didn't even tell them about the reception. Instead, I invited my English teacher, who actually came and brought me a journal as a congratulatory gift. Meanwhile, my parents rearranged their work schedules to attend Ryan's regional baseball championship and drove 6 hours to see Elizabeth compete in a mock trial competition. Family vacations followed the same pattern. They were planned around Elizabeth's academic schedule and Ryan's sports tournaments. If I mentioned a writing workshop or art exhibition happening during summer break, it was dismissed as something we can find locally. We never could. When it came time for college, my parents had already started a fund for law school. When I chose marketing at NYU instead, they repurposed that money for Ryan's law school fund, even though he was still in high school and hadn't even decided on a career path yet. "He'll need it eventually," my father said with confidence. He's a Hayes, after all. The implication hung in the air, unlike me. Despite all this, I built a successful career. After graduating, I landed a position at a respected marketing agency in Boston. I worked hard, earned promotions, and even won an industry award for a campaign I designed. When I called my parents with the news, my mother's response was lukewarm. "That's nice, dear. Did you hear Elizabeth just won the Simmons case? The partners are talking about making her the youngest managing partner in the firm's history." The recent family gathering that I missed, the one in the infamous photo, was our annual summer barbecue at my parents' lake house. I'd requested the time off months in advance, but a major client had a crisis, and as the account manager, I couldn't abandon them. The presentation couldn't be rescheduled. When I called to explain, my mother sighed dramatically. "Work again? Madison, family should come first." Elizabeth manages to make time despite handling major cases, and Ryan is coming despite having court on Monday. "Mom, this is different. If I don't make this presentation..." Yes, I know. Your marketing emergency." I could practically hear her eyes rolling. "Well, we'll miss you, I suppose. There's always next year." I spent hours preparing an elaborate apology care package, gourmet snacks for the barbecue, personalized gifts for everyone, and a heartfelt card promising to make it up to them. I paid extra for same-day delivery to ensure it would arrive before the gathering. When I texted to ask if they'd received it, my father replied with a terse "Yes, thanks." Nothing more. No photos of them enjoying the treats, no mention of the gifts. When I followed up later, asking how everything went, my mother sent a brief "lovely day. Shame you missed it." I told myself it was fine. That they understood. That there would be other gatherings. And then I saw the Instagram post. It was a Tuesday night when my world shifted. After a 14-hour workday finalizing the presentation that had kept me from the family gathering, I collapsed onto my couch with a glass of wine and mindlessly opened Instagram. The algorithm knows us too well sometimes. The first post on my feed was from my mother, unusual, since she rarely posted anything. The image showed my entire family arranged on the deck of our lake house. My father stood tall in the center, one arm around my mother, the other around Elizabeth. Next to Elizabeth was her husband Mark, holding their daughter Emma while their son Jack made a silly face at the camera. On my father's other side, Ryan beamed with his arm around his girlfriend Alyssa. Everyone was sun-kissed and smiling, the lake glittering behind them in the late afternoon light. It was a beautiful family photo. A perfect family photo. A complete family photo, except for the glaring absence of one person. Me. But it wasn't just the image that made my hand shake so badly I nearly dropped my phone. It was the caption beneath it, "Only the most beloved people. Perfect day with those who truly matter. #blessed, #family first, #making memories." I stared at those words until they blurred. Only the most beloved people. Those who truly matter. The comments made it worse. My aunt wrote, "Beautiful family. All the important people together." My mother's friend, Diana, "You're so blessed to have such a devoted family." My cousin, "The Hayes clan all together. Nothing better than family who prioritize each other." 27 comments, and not one person noticed or mentioned my absence. It was as if I'd been erased not just from the photo but from the family narrative entirely. I felt physically ill. My chest tightened, my vision tunneled, and I barely made it to the bathroom before throwing up. Sitting on the cold tile floor afterward, I scrolled through the post again, wondering if I'd misinterpreted somehow. Maybe she didn't mean it that way. Maybe it was just a thoughtless caption. I forced myself to take deep breaths and reached for my phone again, this time to look at our recent text exchanges in a new light. There was the group chat from the week before the gathering. "Mom, can't wait to have all my favorite people at the lake this weekend." Elizabeth, "Jack is so excited to go fishing with Grandpa." Ryan, "I'm bringing that special bourbon Dad loves." Me, "I'll try my absolute best to make it after my presentation." No response to my message. The conversation continued as if I hadn't spoken. With shaking fingers, I called my best friend Kayla. "Kay? Are you up?" My voice cracked. "Mads? It's almost midnight. What's wrong?" When I described the post, Kayla's initial sleepy concern transformed to outrage. She said, "What? Only the most beloved." "Oh my God, Mads, that's horrible. You need to call them out on this right now." "I don't know if I can," I whispered. "Maybe I'm overreacting." "You are not overreacting. This is just the latest in a pattern, and you know it. Your family has been making you feel like an outsider for years, and this is just the most blatant example. Screenshot that post before she deletes it." I did as Kayla suggested, though part of me wished I could just delete the memory of seeing it. Should I comment? Call them? I don't even know what to say. Kayla's voice softened. "Not tonight, honey. You're exhausted and upset. Get some sleep, process this, and then decide how you want to respond." "But Madison? You deserve better than this. You always have." After hanging up, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake replaying memories, conversations, and interactions with my family through the years. The photo and caption had ripped away the comforting illusions I'd built to explain away their behavior. The truth was stark and painful. In my own family, I was an outsider. An afterthought. The least beloved. The morning after discovering the post, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I couldn't face making small talk or giving presentations while my entire sense of identity and belonging was crumbling. Instead, I spent the day on my living room floor with journals, photo albums, and years of saved cards and letters spread around me like evidence at a crime scene. I was looking for patterns, and unfortunately, I found them everywhere. There was my high school graduation card from my parents, a generic congratulations with a $500 check. Inside Elizabeth's graduation card 4 years earlier, which I'd found while looking for art supplies in the family filing cabinet, a heartfelt letter about their pride and a $5,000 check toward her law school expenses. I'd always told myself the difference was because times were tighter when I graduated, or because Elizabeth was going straight to an expensive graduate program. But then I found Ryan's graduation card from 2 years after mine, another emotional letter and a $5,000 check, even though he was taking a gap year to find himself through his music. I flipped through family photo albums. In almost every group shot, Elizabeth and Ryan flanked our parents while I stood slightly apart or was positioned at the edge of the frame. Easy to crop out. Sometimes literally cropped out in the versions my mother framed and displayed. My 25th birthday had been entirely forgotten amid the planning for Ryan's 21st birthday bash the following week. When I gently reminded them, my mother had hastily ordered a cake from the grocery store and given me a gift card to a department store I never shopped at. Christmas gifts told another story. Last year, Elizabeth received a designer handbag and a weekend spa retreat. Ryan got the latest gaming system and tickets to his favorite band. I unwrapped a generic scented candle set and a sweater 2 sizes too large. When I mentioned the size issue, my mother said, "Oh, I thought you'd gained weight. You can exchange it, I'm sure." I found evidence of family trips planned without my input. When I'd requested we visit San Francisco because I was researching West Coast agencies for potential employment, the idea was dismissed. 2 months later, a family trip to San Diego was arranged to coincide with a law conference Elizabeth wanted to attend. The most revealing items were my own therapy journals. For 3 years, I'd been seeing Rachel, a therapist who specialized in family dynamics. In session after session, she gently suggested that my family's treatment of me was problematic. From an entry dated 18 months ago. Rachel asked again today if I've considered that my family's behavior might be a form of emotional neglect. I told her she's exaggerating, they're just busy people with different interests than mine. They love me, they just don't understand me. Rachel gave me that look again, the one that says she's waiting for me to connect the dots myself. And another from just 6 months ago. Discussed the lake house incident with Rachel today. When I explained how my parents gave Elizabeth and her family the master suite while Ryan got the boathouse, and I was told to sleep on the pull-out couch because you're just one person, you don't need much space, Rachel asked how that made me feel. I said practical, but she kept pushing until I admitted less important. She asked if this was a pattern. I'm starting to wonder if maybe it is. Sitting amid this physical evidence, I couldn't deny the truth any longer. This wasn't about one thoughtless social media caption. It was about a lifetime of subtle and not-so-subtle messages that I was less valued, less important, less beloved. I realized with startling clarity how these dynamics had shaped me. My perfectionism at work. Staying later than anyone else, taking on impossible projects, never saying no, was an attempt to prove my worth. My tendency to overgive in friendships and romantic relationships stemmed from a fear that if I didn't make myself indispensable, I'd be discarded. My difficulty accepting compliments or recognition reflected a core belief that I wasn't truly deserving of praise. In my family, I had become the designated outsider, the one who tried hardest to belong precisely because belonging didn't come naturally. I was always the one who remembered birthdays, sent thoughtful gifts, made the effort to visit, called to check in. I was the keeper of connection in a family that never fully connected with me. And what had it gotten me? A caption on Instagram that confirmed my worst fears: I wasn't among the most beloved people. I didn't truly matter. I scheduled an emergency session with Rachel for that afternoon. I saw it, I told her, my voice hollow as I showed her the Instagram post. You were right all along. Rachel didn't look triumphant or say, I told you so. Instead, her eyes filled with compassion. I'm so sorry, Madison. This must be incredibly painful for you. The worst part is, I'm not even surprised. Deep down, I think I've always known. I just didn't want to believe it. Recognition is the first step toward healing, she said gently. Now that you're seeing the pattern clearly, you have choices about how to respond to it. What choices? They're my family. You can't just quit your family. Rachel's response would stay with me for months to come. No, but you can stop auditioning for roles they have no intention of giving you. You can stop seeking validation from people who aren't equipped to provide it. You can build a life rich in genuine connection rather than chasing the illusion of belonging where you've been consistently shown you don't. It sounded both impossible and essential. I left her office with a homework assignment: to pay attention to how much energy I expended trying to win my family's approval, and to imagine redirecting that energy toward relationships and pursuits that actually nourished me. That night, I wrote a new entry in my journal. Today I finally accepted the truth about my place in my family. It hurts more than I can express, but there's also a strange relief in no longer having to pretend. I don't know what comes next, but I know I can't go back to blindly seeking approval that will never fully come. Something has to change. I have to change. I had no idea how soon that change would be forced upon me. For the next week, I moved through my days in a fog. I functioned on autopilot at work, unable to focus on anything beyond the most basic tasks. My appetite disappeared, and sleep became elusive. When I did manage to doze off, I'd jolt awake from dreams where I was shouting at my family while they smiled and chatted as if they couldn't hear me. I hadn't responded to the Instagram post. I hadn't called my parents. I simply withdrew, needing time to process the painful recognition of my family dynamics without their input clouding my judgment. My parents didn't seem to notice my silence, until they needed something. 8 days after the post, my phone rang with my mother's ringtone. I stared at it for several rings, debating whether to answer. Eventually, I picked up. Hello? My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Madison, there you are. I was beginning to think you were avoiding us. My mother's tone was light, as if nothing was wrong. I've been busy, I said flatly. Well, I hope you're not too busy for family. Listen, your father and I need a favor. Elizabeth and Mark are renewing their vows for their 10th anniversary next month, and we're planning a surprise reception. We need you to create those digital invitation things you're so good at. Can you have them ready by Friday? No, how are you? No acknowledgement of not hearing from me for over a week. Just a demand for my professional skills, for free, of course, to celebrate my sister's perfect marriage. Something inside me snapped. Did you ever stop to think about how your Instagram post might have made me feel? The words burst out before I could filter them. There was a pause before my mother responded with obvious confusion. What Instagram post? The family photo from the lake house. The one captioned only the most beloved people. Oh, that. Goodness, Madison, are you upset about not being in a photo from an event you chose not to attend? Her dismissive tone made my hands shake. I didn't choose not to attend. I had a work obligation I couldn't reschedule. Well, same difference. The point is, you weren't there. I don't understand why you're being so sensitive about a simple social media post. It's not about the post, Mom. It's about what it represents. Do you have any idea how hurtful it is to see my entire family labeled as the most beloved people with the implication that I'm, what? Not beloved enough to be missed? My mother sighed heavily. You're reading far too much into this. It was just a caption. I didn't think about it that deeply. That's part of the problem. You don't think about how your words and actions affect me. You never have. Now you're being dramatic. This is exactly why. My father's voice suddenly came on the line. He must have been listening on another extension. Madison, enough of this nonsense. Your mother made an innocent post, and you're turning it into a federal case. If you're feeling left out, maybe you should examine why you're always choosing work over family. His words hit like a physical blow. I'm always choosing work over family? When was the last time any of you chose me? When was the last time you showed up for something important to me? When was the last time you made me feel as valued as Elizabeth or Ryan? This is ridiculous. We don't play favorites. Yes, you do. You always have. And that Instagram post just confirmed what I've always suspected, that in our family, I'm the least beloved. The one who doesn't truly matter. Madison Hayes, you are being completely irrational. If you feel excluded, maybe you should figure out why you're always the problem. The line went silent for a moment as his words hung in the air. I'm the problem? I whispered, tears streaming down my face. For wanting to be treated with the same love and consideration you show my siblings? For wanting to matter to my own parents? My mother's voice returned, softer now but still defensive. Of course you matter, Madison. I don't know where all this is coming from, but it's coming from a lifetime of being treated like an afterthought. It's coming from seeing my accomplishments dismissed while Elizabeth and Ryan's are celebrated. It's coming from that photo and that caption that made it crystal clear where I stand in this family. I think you need to calm down and call us back when you're being more reasonable, my father cut in. This conversation isn't productive. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice steadying. This conversation isn't productive. It never has been, because you refuse to hear me. I ended the call and immediately turned off my phone, knowing they might try to call back to have the last word. Then I curled into a ball on my couch and sobbed until I had no tears left. An hour later, there was a knock at my door. Kayla stood there with a bag of takeout from my favorite comfort food restaurant and a bottle of wine. I had a feeling, she said simply, pulling me into a hug. Through hiccuping sobs, I told her about the conversation. And the worst part is, I concluded, they made me feel crazy for being hurt. Like I'm overreacting to being explicitly excluded and told I don't matter. You are not crazy, and you are not overreacting, Kayla said firmly. What they're doing is called gaslighting, and it's emotional abuse. That word, abuse, hit me hard. I'd never considered my family dynamic in those terms. But they're not bad people, I protested weakly. They don't mean to hurt me. Intent doesn't negate impact, Mads. Whether they mean to or not, they're causing you real harm. And their refusal to acknowledge that harm when you directly point it out. That's a choice they're making. As we talked into the night, a clarity began to emerge from the fog of pain. My therapist had been suggesting for months that I needed firmer boundaries with my family. I'd always resisted, afraid of causing conflict or being further excluded. But now I realized I was already excluded, I was just pretending not to notice. The next morning, I called Rachel and scheduled an emergency session. I need to make a change, I told her. A real one, not just thinking about it or journaling about it. I can't keep doing this to myself. Together, we developed a plan, a complete 90-day separation from my family. No calls, no texts, no social media connection. A clean break to give myself space to heal and recalibrate my sense of self-worth without their influence. This isn't about punishing them, Rachel emphasized. It's about protecting yourself and creating space to build a healthier identity separate from the role you've been assigned in your family. I felt both terrified and liberated by the decision. That evening, I drafted an email to my parents, Elizabeth and Ryan. I need to take some time away from our family dynamic to focus on my own well-being. The recent incident with the family photo and caption brought to light patterns that have been harmful to me for years. My attempts to discuss this were dismissed in ways that have made it clear we cannot have a productive conversation at this time. I'll be taking 90 days of no contact to work on healing. Please respect this boundary. I'll reach out when I'm ready to reconnect. I hesitated before pressing send, my finger hovering over the button. Then I thought of my father's words, maybe you should figure out why you're always the problem, and hit send. It was time to find out who I could be outside the shadow of being the least beloved Hayes. Creating space from my family was both simpler and more complicated than I'd anticipated. The logistics were straightforward. I blocked them on social media, muted their text threads, and set their calls to go straight to voicemail. I alerted my doorman not to accept packages or visitors from them. I created an auto-response for their emails explaining I was taking a personal sabbatical and would not be checking messages. The emotional reality was far messier. Within hours of sending my email, the responses flooded in. My mother's message was guilt-laden. I can't believe you would do this to us. We're your family. Families work through things together, not by running away. My father was predictably stern. This behavior is immature and unnecessary. Whatever issues you think you have can be resolved through rational discussion, not dramatic ultimatums. Elizabeth's response surprised me with its defensiveness. I don't understand why you're dragging me into this. I've never done anything to make you feel excluded. This seems like an extreme overreaction to a simple photo caption. Only Ryan's message showed a glimmer of understanding. I don't fully get what's going on, but if you need space, take it. Call if you need me. I forwarded these messages to Rachel, who helped me process them without responding. Notice how none of them, except perhaps Ryan to a small degree, acknowledge your feelings or experience, she pointed out. They're all centered on their own reactions or defending themselves. The first week of separation was physical withdrawal. I had headaches, insomnia, and constant anxiety. I second-guessed my decision hourly. Was I overreacting? Being dramatic? Burning bridges unnecessarily? I filled pages in my journal with these doubts, often ending entries with some version of, maybe I should just apologize and go back to the way things were. But Rachel had prepared me for this phase. Your family system has conditioned you to doubt your own perceptions and prioritize their comfort over your well-being, she explained. When you disrupt that pattern, it will feel wrong, even physically uncomfortable. That doesn't mean it is wrong. By week 2, the physical symptoms began to subside, replaced by anger, hot, messy, decades-delayed anger. Rachel suggested healthy outlets, boxing classes, scream therapy in my car, writing unsent letters expressing every hurt and disappointment I'd ever swallowed to keep the peace. I hate that you made me feel invisible, I wrote to my parents in one such letter. I hate that I was never enough. I hate that I spent my entire life trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I hate that I still want your approval even knowing I'll never fully have it. These letters were cathartic, releasing emotions I'd suppressed for years. After writing each one, I would perform a small ritual. Reading it aloud before burning it in a fireproof dish on my balcony, watching the ashes of old pain scatter in the wind. By the 1-month mark, something unexpected began to happen. In the absence of constantly seeking my family's approval, I found energy I didn't know I had. I started reconnecting with parts of myself I'd abandoned to fit the Hayes family mold. I pulled out my old art supplies and began painting again for the first time in years. My first attempts were clumsy, but the joy of creation was immediate and profound. I signed up for a weekly art class at a local studio, where I met a diverse group of people who shared my passion for creative expression. I built a support network that became my chosen family. Kayla was my rock, checking in daily and reminding me of my worth when old doubts surfaced. My colleague James, who had gone through his own family estrangement years earlier, became an unexpected mentor, sharing wisdom from his journey. My neighbor Jessica knocked on my door one evening after hearing me sobbing through our shared wall. Instead of being embarrassed, I invited her in and found myself sharing my story. She nodded in recognition. My family was similar, she said. Different details, same theme, I never quite fit the mold they created. It's been 3 years since I limited contact with them, and it's the healthiest decision I've ever made. Jessica introduced me to her friends, a tight-knit group who gathered weekly for dinner and board games. They welcomed me without question, creating space for me at their table literally and figuratively. At work, I stopped trying to be superhuman. I set boundaries, delegated appropriately, and focused on quality over quantity. To my surprise, this led to more recognition, not less. My boss called me into his office 6 weeks into my family separation. "Whatever you've changed in your approach recently, it's working," he said. "Your presentations have more focus, and your creative concepts are bolder." The team has noticed. I'd been dating casually for years, never allowing relationships to deepen significantly. I always found flaws in potential partners, though in retrospect, I was likely sabotaging connections before they could reject me. During my separation period, I met Andrew at my art class. He was a graphic designer who painted abstract landscapes in his free time. Our connection was immediate but different from my previous relationships. I found myself being honest about my family situation early on, testing whether he would judge me or, worse, try to fix things. Instead, he listened attentively and said, "That sounds incredibly painful. Thank you for trusting me with your story." He didn't offer platitudes about how families always love you deep down or suggest I should reconcile before I was ready. He simply acknowledged my experience and respected my boundaries. As the weeks passed, I noticed physical changes too. The perpetual knot in my stomach loosened. I slept more soundly. The stress-induced eczema that had plagued me for years began to clear. I found myself laughing more easily and more often. Rachel noticed the transformation in our sessions. "You're sitting differently," she observed around day 60. "More upright, more present in your body. Less apologetic about taking up space." I realized she was right. I'd spent my life trying to make myself smaller, less demanding, less inconvenient. Now I was learning to occupy my full dimensions without constant apology. Perhaps the most profound change was in my relationship with myself. Without the constant background noise of seeking family validation, I could hear my own voice more clearly. I reconnected with childhood dreams and discovered new passions. I began to trust my own perceptions and honor my own needs. As the 90-day mark approached, I felt both stronger and more vulnerable than ever before. I had built a life that felt authentically mine, filled with people who saw and valued me as I was. But the question loomed, what would happen when the separation ended? Could I maintain my newfound strength while reintroducing contact with my family? I didn't have to wait for day 90 to begin finding out. On day 85, fate intervened in the form of an unexpected encounter at the grocery store. I was selecting avocados in the produce section when I heard her voice. "Madison?" I froze, avocado in hand, before slowly turning around. My mother stood there, looking smaller than I remembered, a half-filled shopping basket hooked over her arm. "Mom." My voice came out steadier than I expected. We stared at each other awkwardly among the fruit displays. She looked tired, with new lines around her eyes that I hadn't noticed before. "You look well," she finally said, her eyes scanning me as if checking for visible damage from our time apart. "I am well," I replied, surprised to find it was true. Another silence stretched between us. A store employee restocking grapefruit nearby gave us a curious glance. "Would you like to get a coffee?" my mother asked, gesturing toward the small cafe at the front of the store. "Unless you're still in your no-contact period." I hesitated, mentally checking in with myself. Was I ready for this? The old Madison would have immediately agreed, desperate for any crumb of attention. But the person I'd become over the past 85 days needed to honor her own boundaries. "I can do coffee," I said finally. "But I need to be clear that I'm not ready to fully reconnect yet. I'm still processing things." She nodded, and we made our way to the cafe in silence, ordered our drinks, and found a small table in the corner. "Your father doesn't know I'm seeing you," she admitted after taking a sip of her latte. "He's still upset about your email." "I'm not surprised," I said, wrapping my hands around my cup. "I didn't expect any of you to understand why I needed this time." "I won't pretend I understood it," my mother said, her voice tight. "It felt like you were punishing us for a minor misunderstanding." I took a deep breath, remembering Rachel's guidance about staying centered in my truth without becoming defensive. "It wasn't punishment, Mom. It was protection." I needed space to understand why that minor misunderstanding, as you call it, hurt me so deeply. And what I've realized is that it wasn't just about that Instagram post. It was about a lifetime of feeling less valued, less important than Elizabeth and Ryan. My mother's face flushed. "That's not fair, Madison. We love all our children equally." "Maybe you believe that's true," I said gently. "But your actions have consistently shown otherwise. The post just made explicit what's been implicit my whole life, that somehow, I'm not quite as beloved as the rest of the family." "That's simply not," she began, then stopped herself. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her cup. "Is that really how you felt all these years?" Something in her tone, a hint of genuine question rather than outright dismissal, gave me courage to continue. "Yes. For as long as I can remember. When my art shows were missed because Ryan's games took priority. When my career choice was treated as a disappointment while Elizabeth and Ryan were celebrated for following the path you wanted. When family vacations were planned around their schedules but never mine. When the master suite at the lake house goes to Elizabeth and the boathouse to Ryan, while I get the pull-out couch. 1,000 small moments that added up to one clear message: I matter less." Tears filled my mother's eyes, surprising me. "I never intended, we never meant to make you feel that way." "I believe you didn't intend it," I acknowledged. "But intent doesn't change impact. And the impact has been real and painful." She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee. When she looked up, there was something in her expression I'd rarely seen directed at me: respect. "You've changed," she observed. "There's a directness to you now. You seem stronger." "I am stronger," I confirmed. "These past months have been transformative. I've reconnected with myself in ways I didn't know were possible." "And you needed to cut us off completely to do that?" There was hurt in her question, but curiosity too. I needed to stop the pattern of seeking validation where it wasn't forthcoming. I needed to hear my own voice without it being drowned out by family dynamics. And yes, for me, that required complete separation. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "I don't know what to say, Madison. Except perhaps that I'm sorry you felt you had to take such drastic measures to be heard." It wasn't quite an apology for the behavior itself, but it was more acknowledgement than I'd ever received. Then she surprised me with an unexpected confession. "Sometimes I wonder if I've been harder on you because you remind me of myself at your age." "What do you mean?" "I wanted to be an interior designer, did you know that? Before I met your father and went to law school instead. She smiled sadly. I see your creativity, your independence, your willingness to forge your own path, and I think I've been jealous. You had the courage to choose your own way. I didn't. This revelation stunned me. My mother, jealous of me? It had never occurred to me that her dismissal of my choices might stem from regret about her own. I didn't know that, I said softly. We've never really talked, have we? Not about the things that matter. She reached across the table, tentatively touching my hand. I'd like to change that, if you're willing. I didn't pull away, but I didn't want to make promises I couldn't keep either. I think we could try. Slowly. With boundaries. My mother nodded. Your father and Elizabeth may take longer to come around. They're less comfortable with emotional conversations. I understand that. But I can't go back to pretending everything is fine when it isn't. I need acknowledgement of my experience, not dismissal. Would you be willing to meet with all of us? To try to explain what you've explained to me today? I considered this carefully. I would, under certain conditions. It would need to be in a neutral location, not at the house. And I'd need assurance that the goal is understanding, not defending or dismissing. We agreed on a family dinner the following week at a restaurant downtown. I spent the intervening days preparing with Rachel, rehearsing how to articulate my boundaries and needs without being derailed by defensive reactions. The evening of the dinner, I arrived first, deliberately choosing a table that would position me facing the door rather than with my back to it, a small but symbolic choice to maintain my agency in the situation. My father arrived next, his face a careful mask of neutrality as he nodded stiffly in greeting. Elizabeth followed shortly after, looking uncomfortable. Ryan was the last to arrive, giving me a supportive wink as he took his seat. After ordering drinks, an awkward silence fell over the table. Thank you all for coming, I finally said. I know this isn't easy. Your mother says you have some concerns you want to discuss, my father said formally, as if we were in a business meeting. I took a deep breath. What I have are experiences and feelings that have shaped my relationship with this family for as long as I can remember. I'm not here to accuse or blame. I'm here to be honest about how those experiences have affected me, in hopes that we can build a healthier relationship moving forward. I spoke for nearly 15 minutes, calmly but directly describing the pattern of exclusion and unequal treatment I'd experienced. I used specific examples but focused on the emotional impact rather than cataloging grievances. I explained how the Instagram post had been a breaking point that forced me to recognize and address long-standing dynamics. My father listened with increasing tension, his jaw clenching visibly. When I finished, he was the first to respond. I think you're grossly exaggerating isolated incidents and manufacturing a narrative of victimhood, he said coldly. We've provided you with every advantage, supported your education, never interfered with your career choices. Dad, Ryan interrupted, surprising everyone. Can you just listen for once? Madison isn't saying you were terrible parents. She's saying she felt excluded in specific ways that hurt her. My father's face reddened. I will not sit here and be lectured about parenting by my children. If Madison chooses to interpret every family decision as some sort of personal slight, that's her prerogative, but I won't validate this distorted perspective. He threw his napkin on the table and stood. Diana, are you coming? My mother hesitated, looking between my father and me with conflicted eyes. Richard, please. Can't we at least try to? I've heard enough, he cut her off. When Madison is ready to have a rational conversation instead of this emotional ambush, she knows where to find us. He stalked out of the restaurant, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. After a moment, my mother squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, she whispered. He needs time. This isn't. He's not good with feeling criticized. I understand, I said, and surprisingly, I did. My father's reaction, while painful, was consistent with everything I knew about him. He was a man who valued control and authority above emotional authenticity. My honesty threatened both. My mother left reluctantly to follow him, promising to call me the next day. Elizabeth, who had remained silent throughout my entire speech, finally spoke. "I had no idea you felt this way, Madison. I always thought you were the lucky one." "The lucky one?" I echoed in disbelief. She nodded, eyes downcast. "You got to be yourself. I've spent my entire life trying to be the perfect Hayes daughter. Perfect grades, perfect career, perfect family. Do you have any idea how exhausting that is? How empty it feels sometimes?" Her admission cracked something open between us. For the first time, I saw my perfect sister as a person carrying her own burdens, fighting her own battles with our parents' expectations. "I never saw it that way," I admitted. "Maybe we've all been too caught up in our own experiences to see each other clearly," Ryan suggested, looking between us. "For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave, Mads. Standing up for yourself like this. I don't know if I could do it." The dinner continued without our parents, transforming into one of the most honest conversations I'd ever had with my siblings. Elizabeth revealed her marriage was struggling under the weight of maintaining appearances. Ryan confessed he still dreamed of pursuing music but feared disappointing our father. In the days that followed, I received texts from both Elizabeth and Ryan, expressing support and a desire to build better relationships outside our parents' influence. My mother called as promised, sharing that my father was still angry but processing in his own way. "He's hurt, Madison. His way of showing hurt is anger. It doesn't mean he doesn't love you." "I understand that," I replied. "But understanding doesn't mean I have to accept harmful behavior. I love Dad, but I need him to acknowledge my experience before we can move forward." The first family event I attended after our confrontation was Ryan's birthday dinner a month later. I arrived with anxiety churning in my stomach, unsure how my father would receive me. He was civil but distant, speaking to me primarily about neutral topics like the weather and current events. I maintained my boundaries, responding politely but not falling into old patterns of seeking his approval. My mother made visible efforts to include me in conversations and planning. Elizabeth and I arranged to meet for coffee the following week, a tentative step toward a new kind of sisterhood. When the evening became tense after my father made a passive-aggressive comment about family loyalty, I did something unprecedented. I thanked everyone for the dinner, made my excuses, and left early. In the past, I would have stayed, swallowing my discomfort to avoid causing conflict. Now I understood that protecting my boundaries wasn't selfish, it was essential. As I drove home that night, I felt a mix of sadness and liberation. The road to healing family relationships would be long and uncertain, with progress measured in small moments rather than dramatic transformations. But for the first time, I was walking that road as my authentic self, not as the person my family had conditioned me to be. That alone was victory enough for now. 6 months after discovering that Instagram post, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The caption that once shattered my world had inadvertently become the catalyst for rebuilding it, stronger, healthier, and authentically mine. My new apartment reflected the change. I'd moved from the sterile, barely decorated space I'd inhabited for years into a sunlit loft with character. The walls, once bare, now displayed my own paintings alongside works from local artists I'd befriended. Colors filled the space, teal throw pillows, a vintage orange armchair, plants thriving on every windowsill. It wasn't just a place to sleep, it was an expression of myself. Professionally, I'd flourished as well. The boundaries I'd established during my family separation translated to my work life in unexpected ways. I stopped volunteering for every project out of a desperate need to prove my worth. Instead, I focused on quality over quantity, bringing my authentic creativity to selected campaigns. 3 months after returning from my separation, I was promoted to creative director, the position I'd been working toward for years but had somehow always felt unworthy of pursuing directly. My relationship with Andrew deepened. He'd seen me at my most vulnerable during the family confrontation period and hadn't flinched. Instead, he provided steady support without trying to rescue me or solve my problems. Last weekend, we'd driven to the coast and spent hours combing the beach for sea glass, laughing as waves chased us up the shore. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt so present, so unguarded with another person. My passion for art had evolved from occasional hobby to serious pursuit. A local gallery had expressed interest in featuring my work in an upcoming showcase of emerging artists. The thought of publicly sharing something so personal still terrified me, but it was an exhilarating kind of terror, the kind that signaled growth rather than threat. The changes in my family relationships were more complex and ongoing. My father and I had established a fragile truce. He never directly acknowledged the patterns I'd identified, but his behavior had shifted subtly. He asked about my work occasionally and had sent a brief but genuine note of congratulations on my promotion. It wasn't the dramatic reconciliation scene from a movie, but it was progress measured in his own language. My relationship with Elizabeth had undergone the most surprising transformation. Our coffee meetup after Ryan's birthday dinner had turned into a 3-hour conversation that cracked open decades of misunderstanding. She'd always interpreted my independence as rejection of the family, while I'd seen her perfect adherence to our parents' expectations as judgment of my different choices. "I was jealous of you," she admitted during that first real conversation. "You seemed so certain about who you were, even when it didn't match what Mom and Dad wanted." "And I was jealous of you," I countered. "You seemed to effortlessly be everything they valued." We'd laughed at the irony, each envying what we thought the other possessed, neither of us seeing the full picture. Now we met regularly, building a relationship based on authentic connection rather than family roles. Ryan had become an unexpected ally and friend. He'd started setting his own boundaries with our parents, including taking a sabbatical from the law firm to record an EP with his old band. He credited my example with giving him courage to reclaim parts of himself he'd suppressed. My mother had made the most consistent efforts to change. She'd started therapy herself, something I never would have imagined possible. We now spoke weekly, conversations that went beyond surface updates to include meaningful exchanges about our lives and feelings. She'd even joined me for an art class, laughing at her own awkward attempts but genuinely celebrating my talent. "I wish I'd encouraged this when you were younger," she'd said, watching me blend colors for a sunset landscape. "I was so focused on what I thought success should look like that I missed how brightly you shine when you're doing what you love." Not every interaction with my family was transformed. There were still difficult moments, old patterns that threatened to reassert themselves. My father could still slide into dismissiveness when stressed. My mother occasionally made thoughtless comparisons between my life choices and Elizabeth's. Family gatherings still held potential landmines of triggers and tensions. The difference was that I no longer measured my worth by their reactions. I had tools to set boundaries, speak my truth, and disengage when necessary. I understood that their limitations weren't my failure. Social media, once the site of such pain, had become a place where I consciously curated my presence. I followed accounts that inspired rather than diminished me. I posted authentic moments from my life without seeking validation through likes and comments. 3 weeks ago, I'd shared a photo that felt particularly significant, a gathering at my apartment that included Andrew, Kayla, Jessica, and her boyfriend, Ryan, and his girlfriend, Elizabeth, and my mother. We were crowded around my dining table, laughing over a game night that had run late into the evening. The caption read simply, "Surrounded by authentic love." My mother had been the first to comment, "So grateful to be included in your beautiful circle." Rachel and I had our final regular therapy session last week, transitioning to monthly check-ins. "When you first showed me that Instagram post," she reminded me, "you were devastated by the exclusion it represented. Look at where you are now." "I never thought pain could be so transformative," I admitted. That caption, "Only the most beloved people," it broke something in me that needed breaking. "And what have you learned through putting yourself back together?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. That worth isn't determined by family validation. That setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for authentic relationships. That patterns can be broken with courage and consistency. That chosen family can be as meaningful as biological ties. And perhaps most importantly? Rachel prompted. That I am enough, exactly as I am. Not because someone else says so, but because I know it to be true. Last weekend, my parents posted another family photo from a dinner celebration for my father's birthday. This time, I was in it, standing between Ryan and Elizabeth, my mother's arm around my shoulder. I felt a momentary flutter of the old insecurity, wondering if I looked like I belonged there. Then I realized something profound: it didn't matter. Whether I was included in their photos or not no longer defined me. My belonging wasn't dependent on their acknowledgement. I had created a life rich with meaning and connection, a life that reflected my authentic self rather than an endless audition for roles others had written. The caption that had once wounded me so deeply had become the catalyst for my most important journey, not to be among the most beloved people in someone else's narrative, but to finally, truly belong to myself. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family to protect your well-being? What helped you find the courage to stand up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the most painful moments become our greatest teachers. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it reminds you that you deserve to be valued exactly as you are.